back to the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. We're back again, this time with the wonderful story of lovers and other killers. And, well, it's interesting. It gets interesting pretty quick. So, first, before we get started on the actual story, let's jump right in and look at our main cast and have a look at all of them, and then I'll just ramble on with the entire story rather than bouncing back and forth like I did before. All right, so first things first, of course, Angela Lansbury is Jessica Fletcher. She is, of course, our wonderful murder mystery writer. We have a very well-known actor, for you guys should know, Peter Graves, who sadly passed away March 14th, 2010. Just 7 years ago. Not that long. He's been in a lot of stuff. Mission Impossible, the television show, the movie Airplane. He was in the TV show Fury, The Night of the Hunter. He was also in Seventh Heaven, the TV series, as the Colonel, John the Colonel Camden. What else has he been in that is more recent? Biography. He was the narrator for that, 1994 to 2001. So he was pretty good with that. TV series documentary, of course. Where is it? Mission Impossible, 1988 to 1990. Jim Phelps. The Love Boat TV series. He had a few roles in that. Where is it? Fantasy Island. He's had a number of roles. The Winds of War TV miniseries. Both Airplane movies, 1 and 2. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Major Noah Cooper. He was in an episode of that. Huh. Yep, and the original Mission Impossible TV series. He was in all of those episodes, as well as the newer one that was there. Yeah. He's been in a few things over the years. But Murder, She Wrote. He was only in this episode as Dr. Edmund Gerard, an old friend of Jessica's. Not a relative, but a friend. Yeah, he's been in a few things for actors and whatnot. He was in American Dad too. Apparently, he was Mr. Pibb, the voice of Mr. Pibb, in A.T. the Abusive Terrestrial. No idea. He was in House, an episode of House, I believe. Yep. And if Diagnosis Murder, he was a couple episodes in that. He was himself in an episode of that. That's interesting. He played a doctor on TV uncredited in one episode, but in another episode, he played himself. Very interesting. Very interesting. So yes, Peter Graves. If you saw his face, you would be like, I have seen him in something. So he plays an old friend of Jessica, who is who's in Seattle, where this episode takes place. And there is a murder. But he has invited Jessica there to teach in a speaking engagement, a guest lecture. Mystery writing guest lecture. And there is a woman named Amelia who is the secretary of Dr. Gerard, played by Lois Nettleton, who passed away in 2008. January. She is most known for General Hospital, The Man in the Glass Booth, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, okay, and Butterfly. That's what she's known for, according to IMDb. She's done some voice work in Spider-Man, the TV series. She was Evelyn in a number of episodes, I think 6 of Crossing Jordan. What else has she done here? Well, that's an old show. She was Daguerre in an episode of Babylon 5 called Soulmates, if any of you have seen that. She played Amelia in Murder, She Wrote. She was also in another episode of Murder, She Wrote in 1988, 4 years later. And then 3 years after that, she was in another episode. So she's been in 3 episodes. In the Heat of the Night TV series, she was Joanne St. John. She was in a couple episodes of The Facts of Life. An episode of Golden Girls, Cagney and Lacey. She was in those episodes, of them. Dulcie May in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas back in 1982. Centennial, Medical Center TV series. And then we're going back into the 60s, and that's stuff that I don't even remember. But yeah, she was former Miss Chicago 1948 beauty pageant contest winner. Huh. Nice. Very nice. So yeah, she's been in a few things. A lot of them like way, many years ago. But she plays Amelia, Dr. Edmund Gerard's secretary. We also have a Professor Todd Lowry, played by Andrew Prine, who is known for, he was in the 1993 movie Gettysburg, 1962 Miracle Worker, and Wide Country and the Road West TV series. Still alive, according to IMDb. He has most recently done, what is it? He was in an episode of Saving Grace, a couple episodes of Crime Scene Investigation, CSI, in 2005. 2015, Beyond the Farthest Star, Senator John Cutter. And 2012, The Lords of Salem as Reverend Jonathan Hawthorne. I don't know. None of these are Weird Science, the TV series. He was apparently Wayne Donnelly and Wyatt Donnelly. I don't remember that TV series. But I remember the movie. I should remember the TV series. Maybe, I don't think I've seen it. What else? Oh, Legate Turrell in the 1995 episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So he was in an episode of that. And Administrator Suna in Star Trek The Next Generation. Frame of Mind. I think that's the one where Riker was going insane. Quite possibly. And here we have him in Murder, She Wrote, where he was in 4 episodes. The next episode other than this one was, because Lover and Other Killers was in 1984. He was in Magnum on Ice, the crossover episode, in 1986, and then another one in 1989, and another one in 1991. So that's two things I've seen so far. 2 actors who come back in an episode of Magnum on Ice. I am so looking forward to that episode. Freddy's Nightmares. He was in a couple of episodes of that. Interesting. The Final Battle TV miniseries, 1984. He was Steven in all 3 parts. Or at least 3 parts of it. I don't know if it's all three. And he was Steven in TV miniseries in 1983 as well. So he was in V. That's pretty good. Dan Costello in Web, W-E-B TV series. I don't know. So yeah, he's been in a few things. Oh, he was in Wonder Woman. I just saw Wonder Woman. TV movie, 1974, George Calvin. He played. So yeah, he's been in a few things. You can check out his work. Who else is there? We've got Lieutenant Andrews, played by Greg Morris. He's our police detective that's involved. African-American actor. Passed away in 1996, sadly. His last one was a TV movie called Le Peloton d'Execution. It's a TV movie. He was Barney Collier in 3 episodes of Mission Impossible, 1989, 88 to 89. General Masters in War of the Worlds. He was Lieutenant Andrews in Murder, She Wrote. He was in T.J. Hooker. He was Jimmy's cousin in 3 episodes of The Jeffersons. Lieutenant David Nelson in Vegas, the TV series, but the S is a $. Interesting. And yep, Barney Collier in Mission Impossible TV series, 66 to 73. So he played a big role in the old Mission Impossible TV series. So that's 2 people that's been in the Mission Impossible TV series in this episode, I believe. So that's cool. I can dig that. What else? Who else is in this episode? There's just a couple more. We've got Lila Schroeder, played by actress Lori Walsh, who best known for, I guess, sticking together with the Mackenzies of Paradise Cove, Mackenzies of Paradise Cove, the Oogly family, and the Asphalt Cowboy. I guess. I don't know any of those. She's in a few episodes of Simon and Simon. I vaguely remember that show. She was only in the 1 episode of Murder, She Wrote. But yeah, The Mackenzies of Paradise Cove was a TV series. Mulligan Stew was a TV series. And yeah, there's not a lot. She's only been in 17 acting credits. So she hasn't been in a lot. We've got Grant Goodeve as Jack Kowalski, the abusive husband of Lori. He's currently in Twin Peaks, the 2017 one that's in post-production, which means I believe he should probably be in... Oh no, no way, dude! Dude! That's amazing. Okay. So he does a voice in video games. Mr. Grant Goodeve. Yep, he does a voice in video games. A voice that some of you may know. If you happen to play, I don't know, Team Fortress 2? Maybe? Team Fortress 2? Anybody? Yeah. This guy who plays an abusive husband in this 1 episode of Murder, She Wrote back in 1984 is the voice of the engineer in Team Fortress 2. So there you go. Something you don't know. He was Rick Penderson in Northern Exposure. He was in this episode of Murder, She Wrote and 2 others as different characters. In a few episodes of Dynasty, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. 8 is Enough TV series. He was in all of that as David Bradford. But I don't see Twin Peaks in here other than that one. And he's only in like the first episode, I think. Let me see if I can find Twin Peaks. Yeah, it's just the one episode for Twin Peaks, so I don't know if he was in the original or not. Interesting. So that was Mr. Goodeve, and the other character that we need to be concerned about in this one is Mr. David Tolliver, played by Andrew Stevens. And Andrew Stevens has been in a few things. He's the producer of Boondock Saints and the producer of The Whole Nine Yards. He was in the movie Death Hunt, and he was in the movie Night Eyes 3. And if you can see the poster I'm looking at, it's one of those movies. Night Eyes 3 is one of those movies where you're not old enough to buy actual porn or rent actual porn. Well, I should say, if you weren't old enough to rent actual porn, when you had to go to a video store to rent it in the first place. Night Eyes 3 is the kind of movie you would rent. It's basically Skinamax. That's what that poster is. It's basically Skinamax. Wow. Okay. Apparently, the most recent movie he's done as an actor, he was Jackson in 2010's Mongolian Deathworm, the TV movie. Walking Tall Lone Justice 2007 video, which I assume means direct-to-video. Oh, God, some of these names. The Kid with the X-Ray Eyes. Wow. Night Eyes 4, Fatal Passion. Okay, so it's a series. Night Eyes 3, Night Eyes 4, Fatal Passion. Wow. Wow. That's... Wow. Some of these posters, man. Body Chemistry 3, Point of Seduction. Yeah, that's another one. That's another one. He's been in a lot of those, which I don't blame him, because in this particular one, back in 1984, he was young and good looking. The hell is that? Detective Extra Large? Yo-yo. Okay, I've got to... Oh, what? I don't know what this is. Okay. Detective Extra Large. Bud Spencer as Jack Extra Large Costello. I'm getting off on a... Okay, Italian actor. Huh. Interesting. I'm getting off on a tangent. Where was I? Yes. He was Bartok in the Swamp Thing TV series. Mr. Andrew Stevens. What else? The Legend of Prince Valiant. He played the voice of Carl. Dr. Richard Wyman in Silk Stockings TV series. Silk Stockings, that's the one with... okay. Yeah, I remember. I remember when that was on TV. Red-Blooded American Girl. That's the name of a movie. Wow. Okay. He was David Tolliver in this episode, and in 1989 he played a doctor in that one, which is 5 years later, which is good for reasons I will get into shortly. He was in the Code Red TV series, Emerald Point NAS TV series, the Oregon Trail TV series. I believe he died of dysentery. Oh, I pulled that joke out of nowhere. Um, but yeah, he's been a producer for 122 credits. He's directed 16 movies, or some movies and TV shows. But yeah, producer for 122, and he's got 87 acting credits. So he's a lot more in the producer side of things. Um, okay. Andrew Stevens, President CEO of Andrew Stevens Entertainment and Stevens Entertainment Group, has produced and or financed over 170 films through his various production and distribution companies unique in the motion picture industry. Stevens, where is it? Stevens has functioned in almost every capacity in the entertainment business, from creative development of motion picture stories and screenplays to foreign sales, distribution, post-production, deliveries and collections. He's an accomplished screenwriter, director, as well as a prolific producer, and was a successful actor for more than 20 years. Wow. Wow. Active since 2003 January, his company has developed, produced, and or arranged the financing for more than 25 motion pictures, including 7 Seconds and The Marksman, both starring Wesley Snipes, Black Dawn, starring Steven Seagal, Pursued, starring Christian Slater, Blessed, starring Heather Graham, Method, starring Elizabeth Hurley, and Silent Partner, starring Tara Reid. Very interesting. But yes, he plays David Tolliver. Okay, that's our cast. That's all the people that we have. So, what is happening? What is happening in this episode? Well, it starts off in a darkened house, and the camera kind of pans around, and we see a flashlight. And then there's somebody dressed all in black and a flashlight rummaging through drawers, looking for something. We don't know what, but rummaging around and making a mess. And they find a safe in the back of the closet. And as they're working to go and unlock that safe, there's a noise, and whoever this is, shuts off the light, closes the door, and in walks a woman in a fancy dress, stumbling around. We see she looks like she's inebriated, and she picks up the phone and starts to call. And when she goes to pick up the phone, we see a photograph of David Tolliver sitting on the thing. Apparently the phone isn't working, and she thinks she sees something as the door to the closet closes. And then she ends up wandering over to one of her dressers that's all been ransacked. She doesn't seem too overly concerned. Then she heads on over to the desk, reaches under it, and as she's rummaging around and winding up a little music box for some reason, I assume her actions are because she's drunk. The burglar sneaks out of the closet and sneaks up behind her. And when she gets up to confront him, the burglar grabs hold of her thick pearl necklace and uses it to strangle her to death. Murder. Then we see a picture of the Seattle airport. And, of course, we see Peter Graves on the phone, Dr. Edmund, Gerard making a phone call. Jessica ends up coming up the stairs and holding a small Asian child in her arms. I'm not making this up. A small Asian child, and is cradling it. And of course, her friend is just like, when you said you were getting off the plane with someone, I didn't know you mean that. And then from behind Jessica comes a pair of Asian women in nun habits who speak to Jessica in Chinese. She speaks back in Chinese, hands him the baby, and off they go with this baby. I don't know why that was included in this particular story, uh, other than to maybe uh, make it seem like Jessica Fletcher knows Chinese, because her friend Edmund waves goodbye to the two ladies and says sayonara, and Jessica's like, "That's Japanese, not Chinese. They're Chinese." So off they go to the college where they meet Amelia, the secretary, who is chiding Dr. Gerard for buying an inflatable raft. And he's like, "Well, I might want to go river rafting." Uh, and he's like, "You sound like a wife," he goes and mentions. And that causes a bit of a almost distraught look from her to him that Jessica notices, even though she kind of laughs it off. Uh, and then we get to see them walking through uh, the Seattle campus, talking because he's the dean of a little university there, um, and they're having a nice little conversation about things, where she's kind of like, well, kind of letting him know that Amelia has the hots for him. His secretary is interested in him, but there'll be a setup for Jessica to get a secretary while she's here for the duration of her speaking engagement. That'll all be taken care of. And then it goes to the hotel at night, and there's a knock on her door, and Jessica goes to answer it, and it's Mr. Tolliver. It's David Tolliver, a very handsome young man, who's like, "I'm here for the secretary position," and wants to be invited in. And Jessica's a little hesitant, but she does invite him in, and she's leery about this, because she was expecting an older woman, and he's like, I'm gonna razzle and dazzle," because he has this very confident personality, and hands her a magazine and tells her to pick a page, any page. So she picks one, and he goes and sits down at the typewriter and just starts banging away at the keys all super fast while talking with her, and types out the left column on her typewriter from the magazine, demonstrating, he's good at doing this, while explaining that he's self-taught. And then he takes dictation as she's speaking it, writing it all down, because she's basically saying, like, it's not you, or it has anything to do with your gender or your skills. It's just not used to working with younger men. She was expecting to work with an older woman. And he goes and writes it all down, except changes that last bit to say that she would much prefer, instead of her saying, because what she did say was that she would much prefer working with an older woman, he changed it to that I would much prefer to work with a younger man. And he's like, "Oh, I got that last bit wrong, didn't I?" Because he's very charming, and very, very charming, and very clever, and handsome, and pretty, and all this and that. So she finally says, "Come by tomorrow, 10 a.m., and gives him the job. So he was good. Um, she seems a little off put of him, or a little stunned. Then it goes to the college where she's teaching in full on actor mode, as she's doing two different voices about part of one of her mysteries, and she's got a little fake gun, which you see her fire in the opening sequence. She points it, and it's like a little bang flag, and ends up lecturing the class and whatnot. basically saying some stuff, general stuff. But there's an older man in the audience, Mr. Mr. Lowry, Professor Lowry, who Todd Lowry, Andrew Prine. She talks with him afterward because he comes to have a few words with her after the class is dismissed, and during this whole conversation, you see he actually ends up mentioning his wife, and she notices that there's this beautiful young woman in the back that has come in and is waving to the professor. Oh, we got a phone call coming in. There we go. It's been answered. So yes, there's the young lady is looking at the professor, and the professor is looking at her, and Jessica notices this and asks her friend who comes down after the professor leaves if that was Professor Lowry's wife. Then Jessica comes home and finds him reading her book because his work's all done. And he ends up inviting her out to dinner to a fancy restaurant because Jessica is like, I don't think I could stomach beer and pizza, what you young college students do. And he's like, no, I was thinking Chateaubriand. And they head out to dinner, and she ends up paying for it, even though he has money. They have a good time. There's some flirting going on, mostly from him to her, as he's kind of flirting his way, trying to insinuate himself to her, it seems. And after the wonderful dinner that she pays for, they drive a nice car. He's got like loads of bank. She mentions the nice car, and up comes Lieutenant Andrews, who wants him to come down to the station and have a few words about the murder of an older woman that he had some connections to. There's a 2-hour questioning period, which he seems to think is routine, but she knows is not. And in they get in the car, and she notices that they've got a tail practically immediately, but she doesn't say anything to him. Instead, she ends up finding the detective and talking to him about it. And the lieutenant warns her to stay away from him because he's pretty sure that David Tolliver was sleeping with this older woman that was murdered, that he suspects him of killing, among other things. Of course, Jessica doesn't really want to believe it. She gets home, back to her hotel room, and notices her briefcase is opened and some of the files are sticking out of it. And as she goes to examine this, David Tolliver comes out of the bathroom and had let himself in without her permission. To which, after the warning the detective gave, she's a little wondering about him. She's not sure about his motives and whatnot. So she gets him to leave and tells him to never let himself in again, because she's kind of like, stepping back here, which is understandable. So he leaves without much fuss, even though there's this lingering suspicion going on between him and Jessica. Don't know what's going on there. The next thing we see that Mr. Graves and Jessica are coming into his office, into the Dean Gerard, and Mr. Tolliver's there. and is basically going, I didn't do it, Mr. Gerard. I didn't do what they say. I want to convince you of that. And he seems very sincere. And Jessica seems to have forgiven him a little bit. Next thing you know, Jessica's getting a call from a beautiful young woman. Who could this beautiful young woman be? Well, it's none other than Lila Schroeder. The same young woman who was sleeping around, it seems. And Miss Schroeder, at least I'm pretty sure it was Miss Schroeder. It could have been somebody else. We'll just have a little peek-see here. Let's see now. Is that her or is it not her? Because she pops up a fair bit. I think that was her. But we're going to double check. Let's see. I think that and yep, that was her. Okay, good. Yeah, the same woman who was with the professor calls up Jessica and is like, I got proof that David Tolliver didn't kill that woman. I'll give it to you at this abandoned warehouse at 10 o'clock. And as she's leaving the payphone, Jack Kowalski comes up. The big buff guy that was the Grant Goodeve, the voice of the engineer. And is very much squeezing her arm, and she's basically like, no, it's over between us, man. It's over. So she gets away from him and heads over and sits down at a table with another young man who doesn't have a role in this movie. He just happened to be there, I guess. Then we see Jessica taking a cab to the abandoned warehouse and heading upstairs. And as she goes upstairs and heads inside the warehouse, the camera pans off and we see a car's headlights come on in the distance and this dark car drive away. Inside, Jessica's wandering around the warehouse a bit, finds down a roll of boxes, and then we see there's Lila coming out from the darkness between some boxes, stumbling and falling down dead. The police are there pretty quick. Lieutenant Andrews is talking with Jessica, and he still believes that Mr. Tolliver is behind it. And while they're having their little discussion, another detective comes up and says, we checked with the surveillance team, and Mr. Tolliver has been in his apartment all night, and he hasn't come out. So it goes to a little while later, and we see Lieutenant Andrews and Jessica and Mr. Tolliver in Lieutenant Andrews' office talking about this, and that she was the one that definitely could clear his name, but now she can't because she's dead. Jessica goes to find Mr. Gerard, and Amelia is kind of very brusque with Jessica in this scene. And Jessica's just like, no, I'm not your rival. You know that, right? He's just a very dear friend. I have no romantic interest in Gerard. And she tries to like blow it off. Amelia does, is like, oh, that's just silly. What are you talking about? But Jessica sees right through her, and gets the confession that she definitely is attracted to Mr. Gerard, but he doesn't seem to have those feelings. Jessica just says he needs a little nudge from you, Amelia, Just give him that nudge, and he'll come around. So she goes and heads off and meets with Jack Kowalski. She meets with who's swimming in the pool. There's a wonderful talk where he's basically like, "Oh, Miss Fletcher, you're the murder lady, right?" Then he gets out and hops on the treadmill. They have a little discussion, and Jessica's kind of like probing him for some answers uh, about maybe did he kill his wife, and there's no real he denies it, of course, and ends up towards the end of the conversation go, "Shouldn't you be in class?" And when she checks her watch, she's like, "Oh no, I'm late," and hurries to class uh, and apologizes to the class as she's there. And then she embarks on this theoretical experiment with the class about thinking like the murderer, and singles out Mr. Lowry, asking about one of the characters in this scenario who's a college professor and cheating on his wife, and basically kind of spooks him a bit, as we see. It's a wonderful little moment because neither one of them want to call out the other as to what's going on exactly. So it's all couched in hypotheticals, but both of them know exactly what's going on. Jessica gets back to her hotel and finds a note on the fridge from David Tolliver that there was a phone call from Professor Lowry that he wanted to meet. So she heads off to meet with Professor Lowry at his office at 9. The elevator's out of order, so she's heading up the stairs. And as she's like hears somebody upstairs, and she's spooked a bit. So she pulls out a can of mace, and she's got it ready to fire as she goes up the stairs. And when she gets to the top, she's surprised by a hooded figure, a dark figure in black with like a mask, that pushes her down the stairs. And Jessica tumbles down these darkened stairs. I'm pretty sure that was a stunt double, but it looked convincing. Her mace bottle is clattering down the steps, and she's kind of like groggy and laying there. And then we hear David's voice calling, and she kind of is all dazed and confused, looking at Mr. Tolliver, who happens to be there. The ambulance is going down the street. Next scene. There's a lot of sharp cuts in this show. And she's got a thing on her head, an ice pack, as David is explaining that he saw the note and tried to rush after her, but got there too late. In the hospital, Mr. Gerard is accusing David of being the one that pushed her down the stairs, and he's like, "It wasn't me. I told you I have an alibi." He's like, "Why don't you stop lying?" He's like, "Because I know you weren't with Lila Schroeder the night that you claim you were, because I was." Dun dun dun. That's right. Old Dean Gerard was with the sexy, hot, young Lila Schroeder that night. Then there's a scene in a restaurant. The next day, you see the Seattle Tower in the background. As he explains that he was having a bit of an affair with Lila Schroeder. Not an affair because he's not married, but he was seeing her for a bit because she was young, she was attractive, and so on. Over the course of their conversation about his relationship with her, they order some stuff, and he pays for his meal with a credit card, which is basically supposed to be a MasterCard, but it has the MasterCard symbol, but the words on it is Bankmaster. Bankmaster, because I don't think they had the right to do an actual MasterCard, so it was a fake one. But he recounts to Jessica that there was he was seeing her at this lumberjack inn out of town, and that somebody kind of tried to run them off the road after in a dark blue sedan. Um, that she thought it was just a drunk driver, but he thinks it was a warning to him. Then Jessica goes and meets with Professor Lowry, who seems to be concerned about her, and lets her know that her little stunt has made him talk to his wife, and they've kind of smoothed things out, and they're going to work on things and, you know, get back together, so to speak. But she mentions about his car being dinged, about it being a dark blue sedan, and is like, nope, no, I don't own a dark one. My wife dropped me off here. She's got the car right now. Then we see her heading to the campus, talking to the lieutenant, and they ended up finding who killed the elderly lady that they suspected David of doing, Mr. Tolliver. They suspected him of killing it, but they basically found some of the stolen jewels that led them to a fence, that led them to a 3-time loser, as he said, who confessed to the job. So that murder's solved, but they still have the murder of Lila to contend with. Jessica's back home, and David is in her apartment again after she told him not to. Things are getting creepy now. He seems a bit stalkerish here. So she kind of she lets him know, things are okay in that regard, but she doesn't see him the way that he sees her. And they get in a little bit of an argument, especially about the note that he left, because he took a phone call from Professor Lowry, and she focuses on something he says when he mentioned the person that left the message, because they spoke in a whisper and it sounded forced, and that tells Jessica something very important. Very important indeed. So she rushes off and speaks with Amelia, to let Amelia know that Lieutenant Andrews is getting a warrant for Gerard's arrest, and that he's being stupid because it's not Gerard, but because Gerard owns a dark blue sedan, they of course thought that it had to be him. And Lila mentions, lots of people own dark blue sedans. I own a dark blue car. That means nothing. And that's when Jessica kind of lays it all out that Amelia is the one who killed Lila Schroeder. Amelia is the one who did it because she knew that Gerard was sleeping with Lila, and she was jealous. She was the one who tried to run them off the road and scare them. She was the one who pushed Jessica down the stairs to scare her. She knew about the Lumberjack Inn because she pays the dean's credit card bills with which he pays for things. Oh, the credit card, you see? Tiny little details that pop up. And she of course did it because she was in love with him. And so there's a big tearful confession that she wrings out of her, during which Mr. Gerard, the dean, comes in partway through and hears it. So Amelia is the killer. Then we see Jessica stopping at the airport, ready to go home, grabbing a postcard, and Mr. Tolliver comes by with a stuffed bear to give her, trying to be, charming and whatnot, and letting her know that he is attracted to her, and he doesn't know why, but he is, and she's being very guarded at this point. And she's like, I've got to go now because my plane. And of course, he seems a little upset. he's all, even acquaintances have ways of saying goodbye. And she's like, "Goodbye, David. I do wish you well." And he finally gives her the stuffed bear that he bought for her. And they part ways. Uh, but the ending scene is really kind of ominous, because she says she might she might put him in as a character in her new book, and he's like, "Oh, will I be the victim or one of the suspects, or will I be the murderer?" And she's like, "I don't know yet." And then she says goodbye and wanders off. And he's kind of smiling the entire time as she's talking, until she's turned her back and has left, and the smile kind of drops from his face as it closes in on his face, and then freeze frame, credits, with that, an unsmiling, pretty face. Given all his previous behavior in the episode, that's a very ominous way to end things. I don't know, because he's not in any other episodes of Murder, She Wrote. At least I don't think he is. I will double check. I don't think so. I think it's just the one. No, he is in one other one, but as a different character. That character, David Tolliver, I don't think ever comes back. Which I'm okay with, because he's a little creepy. I'm not going to lie. He's a little creepy. And as of right now, we are currently, for the Murder, She Wrote tallies, we have 2 murders in the New York area. 1 murder in Cabot Cove, Maine. 1 murder in San Francisco, California. 1 murder in Los Angeles, California. 2 in Greenville, Virginia. And 2 in Seattle, Washington. Even though one of those 2 murders wasn't caused by the killer that she caught, it's still kind of tied up with it. And we've got a friend in the Dr. Gerard, but not a relative, so I'm not adding it to the relatives total. So far, he's got a nephew, a niece, and a cousin that we know of for sure. So that's it for this episode of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. Ring the notification bell as well. I try to get at least a video out a week, but I've been doing pretty good on getting my goal of 5 videos out a week. Monday through Friday, 1 video a day. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think about Murder, She Wrote? And this wonderful episode in particular. This episode was kind of dark. It ended in a bit of a dark way. I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of creepy. So throw those comments in the comment section. Let me know how I'm doing. And until next time, my friends, you all take care and join me for the next episode of Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast for more glorious murder.